Good morning, Jennifer. How are you?
Good morning, Jen Grace. How are you?
Doing well. We're here for a lovely Monday morning, which seems to be a pattern of ours. We seem to be on Monday mornings quite a bit.
It's kind of before the dizziness kind of hits, it's that like easing in from the weekend, but we know the deluge is coming, but it's in this sort of little window where everyone is still kind of, especially in the virtual world, I don't know, but the pacing is so different. It's like the intense times happen in different, there's just a different rhythm to it. So I wonder if we're sort of in a lull, a nice lull in Monday before.
It must be, even though at this hour I've already had 2 calls usually. So it's not typically that this is the first, but it's all good regardless. So
all good.
Yeah, let's let's have a conversation today with our guest Nicholas, and I am just really personally intrigued by this topic in general, and I know you are too. So I say let's just get straight into the meat by bringing Nicholas on. Welcome. How are you?
I'm great, thanks. Thanks so much for having me on, Jen and Jennifer. I really appreciate it. Excited to be here.
Yeah. Happy to have you. So I'll start, Jen. Nicholas, tell us what you do, who you do it for and with. And, if you'd like, tell us some context about why this is your passion from a personal stance, because I always love hearing, like, how did we come to care about what we do in the world and be so passionate about creating change.
Yeah. Well, thank you for asking that, because I am extremely passionate about what I do. But I guess I'll introduce myself first. I am the owner and founder of Halcyon Health, which is a dietetic private practice. So, and it's 100% telehealth currently. So what I do is I provide medical nutrition therapy and nutrition counseling to people that are looking to either they come to me for preventative measures. Maybe they have a family history of diabetes or other chronic diseases, so they want to make sure that they don't go down that path. And then I also help people manage their chronic diseases through nutrition interventions. So again, people who already have these chronic diseases, whether it's HIV, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, those things. This is where I kind of come in after they get those diagnoses, and I help them manage those. And I mostly serve the LGBTQ community. That doesn't necessarily mean that I don't serve other communities, but that's sort of my target client focus, because we do have some unique health concerns. And I want to make sure that those are addressed, because one, they should be, obviously. And two, there's not a lot of queer dietitians out there. And I want to make sure that, I'm creating that space for us to come to, especially, with the HIV client, people who are living with HIV, and then transgender folks. There's a lot of stigma around that. And it's really difficult to find healthcare practitioners that you can relate to and feel comfortable telling your story to. It's so, so important to have trust in your healthcare practitioners. So that's why I'm doing it. And I think maybe your other question was like, why did I become a dietitian? Or
yeah.
Okay. I just don't want to ramble.
No, you're good.
So yeah, this one, I'll try to summarize it, but there was a lot of different avenues that kind of brought me to the profession that I'm in now. I actually had some food insecurity growing up. Kind of grew up in a dysfunctional family. I'm from Tennessee and Memphis. So there was some food insecurity as far as not having access to healthy foods. I literally, like, a home cooked meal for us was Hamburger Helper. And that was our home cooked meal, and there were no fruits or vegetables, with that Hamburger Helper. And other than that, it was McDonald's and sodas. I remember one time I drank so many sodas, I literally lost my taste buds for a week. So just extremely unhealthy. I was a really active kid too. I was a gymnast and a runner and all these things. But then as I got older, I realized that, this is not normal. And I should probably do something about it. And I had a friend, he was vegan, and, you know, he was all like vegan, 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 you know, plant power. And one day I, you know, was trying to get healthy, and I called him up. I'm in the grocery store, and I'm like, you know, hey, Brennan, I'm in the grocery store. I'm looking for some healthy snacks. Can you give me some ideas? And I'll leave out the cuss word, but he said, have you ever heard of a blank fruit? And I'm like, yes, but for some reason, it didn't compute in my head that could be a snack. You know, I'm looking for these packaged foods. So that's kind of like one avenue that brought the awareness of health, and the fact that I knew nothing about nutrition. And then there's sort of this like community aspect that kind of brought me into nutrition as well. I was attending a small gay church in Memphis, and a lot of our congregation, they were HIV positive, or they were food insecure themselves. And this is before we had the Affordable Care Act. And some of these people were literally choosing between their medications or food. And it was so sad. And we had a small food pantry, but I actually helped expand it a little bit, so that more people had access. We had more food for the community and our congregants. And then I was like, this is what I need to be doing. I was working in real estate. This is my second career. And so I went back to school, and now I'm doing what I absolutely love doing.
Wow, there's so much goodness in like everything that you were just saying. So to me, it seems kind of obvious as to why you would choose to want to work within the LGBTQ community specifically. And you kind of a little bit alluded to that kind of at the top of just not, or maybe even before we were recording, just not being able to kind of trust, or having a lack of a trust for a provider who may not understand who you are, or not be familiar with the different and unique health challenges that someone within the community might have. So can we take a little detour down that road for a minute to just kind of talk about what those, because I feel like I've had a lot of conversations kind of in this space around, like health and nutrition related to LGBTQ people. But I feel like for some people, it's shocking when you kind of hear like the disparities. So can we kind of just talk a little bit about that, since I know that's really kind of your sweet spot?
Sure, absolutely. It is a little shocking, like you said, because when we think of nutrition, we think that kind of everybody is a little bit the same, and we should just, all eat healthy. But I provide medical nutrition therapy, which is very specific to, whatever's happening with that person. So for example, gay men are more likely to have body dysmorphia than their counterparts. So just meaning that, you're not happy with the way your body looks, there's a link, with that, with depression, kind of around being gay, and, having that stigma, and body dysmorphia, and including, all these like messages and images that we're receiving for having this perfectly, chiseled body. And it's extremely common. I had someone recently, they sent me this link to the perfect measurements of the male body. And it was like, your shoulders need to be this big, your lats need to be this big, and then your waist needs to be this big. So yeah. And what as far as intervention with that is, I really try to get people to those kind of clients to really focus on more like intuitive eating. So let's stop counting, all of the calories. Let's stop counting the macros, because it's really not helpful, and it's oftentimes harmful. And then we have the lesbian community, which, and this is an in-Hain survey, so this is not just like my observations, tend to have excess weight compared to their counterparts. And yes, you can be healthy at most, at any size. But there are some, links to having excess weight and chronic conditions. So, that, should be addressed. And then we have the transgender community who have really unique health concerns. I know my eyes got big because I really love helping this community, because a lot of dietitians just don't know what to do with the trans community. And what that means is, like, typically whenever a trans person is going through hormone therapy, there's some unique health concerns as far as like it can actually reduce bone density. And then you have some changes in lipid, sort of lipid, distribution, fat distribution in the body. So we can help with that. And then we have the HIV community, the kind of, subset, who are also having some unique health concerns as far as, they're living longer. The HIV meds are fantastic, but there are some side effects like dyslipidemia. And what that is just a shift in body fat. So, which some kind of get like the skinnier arms, and then they get a little bit more truncal fat, which can increase their risk for cardiovascular disease and diabetes. So, but there are some nutrition interventions that, dietitians can help with to sort of stave that off.
I have one question that I know Jen wants to kind of ask about kind of the dietitian community at large, but on the surface, I feel like, to me, when we're talking about the disparities between gay men, lesbians, the trans community, and folks with HIV, I feel like most of that all kind of makes sense to me as to why there might be an increased pressure and body dysmorphia for gay men, right? So I feel like just from a society, like I can see that. And then also within like the trans and the HIV communities, I can also see why just different types of like hormones and medications and how all that would kind of play into, into our health and like why, why things might look differently. But what I can't fully wrap my head around is the obesity within lesbians specifically. Do you just that kind of like baffles my mind of like, well, what is it specifically about the DNA of a lesbian that would make someone more prone to being obese? Like, I'm just kind of curious what your thoughts are on that.
Sure. Well, unfortunately, and this is the other part of the disparity, is that the NHANES survey only has these sort of markers, but they don't dive into, why these things are happening. Some of them we know, like I said, with gay men and body dysmorphia, there is a link to depression, and sort of the thesis is, being gay, and sort of living with that stigma causes depression, and then you link it to body dysmorphia. I have not been able to find any clear evidence that shows why the lesbian community has, tends to have excess, weight compared to their counterparts. I wish I had the answer, but we need more research on that. And there's not a lot being done.
Yeah, that's so interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder, I think this is a great segue to my question, Jen, which is around representation, because I think lesbians in particular there's intersectionality in so many communities, right? But we have this, we have, gender issues of trust, gender-related issues of trust even. And then you add on LGBTQ identity, you add on other ethnicities, which compound in the sense of intersectionality around not seeking help, medical support, even just understanding your health, because you feel completely uncomfortable disclosing and working with a male doctor, cisgender male doctor, I'll say, or who you assume is cisgender, we don't know. But like in my experience anyway, like taking just the gender identity piece and putting that front and center, it's just like feeling that your options are mainly male doctors, cisgender male doctors. And as a woman who identifies as a woman, this has always been uncomfortable, depending on the specialty. And so being vulnerable, to that is something we avoid, because we don't want to go through that. And so we avoid caring for our health. We avoid understanding with the help of a clinician and medical professional, what behaviors that we are adopting. And so it's that, I think your DNA question, Jen, just makes me feel about like the safety question is so powerful. And so, yes, the reason why we need more representation of all kinds of providers in all fields, so that we can see ourselves and we can be open, and we know that we are not going to be met with unconscious bias or conscious bias on the part of our provider. And it's just so important. So I guess, like, what do you notice in the dietitian community? You've already kind of touched on this, but like, how does that change then? Because it's a conundrum in so many different fields. How do we make each field more representative of the world that needs to be served? and supported, when so many of these fields kind of, as you would expect, kind of grew up with the most, I would say, perhaps privileged going into that work. And now the work is to broaden each field, so that we can find somebody that we can trust, so that we don't avoid care, because then we have the disparate health impacts of not knowing, not investing, not thinking it's important, feeling ashamed to seek help, not even knowing what we would seek help about, and it just compounds to make our health outcomes like so different when we are underrepresented or stigmatized.
Yeah, you're dead on. I think that. So I'm kind of we have the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. They do these surveys on basically the demographics of dietitians. And we have about a little over 93,000 in the United States. 94% of those are female, so it's a very female-dominated field. So that right there kind of limits, diversity. Less than 4% of those are males, and no other gender is identified. They don't even ask. They only ask male or female. So, and they just did this survey in 2021, and they we're just talking about, diversity. How do we increase diversity? But it is, which I think is great, it's mostly centered around how to get people of color into our profession. So I'll say, first of all, the reason why diversity is lacking in our community is because it's really difficult to become a dietitian, and it's expensive. We go through an extensive dietetic internship to become a dietitian. Only 50% of people actually get an internship who apply for one every single year. Only 50%.
What's the cost of that?
It's just, there's a lack of preceptors. So we have to have preceptors in order to go through the dietetic internship. So we don't have enough preceptors, and it's expensive. So during the internship, most of the time you cannot work through that. And we pay for the internship. We pay to work a lot of money. I won't say how much, and it differs, in different fields. So thinking about, honestly, I don't know how I did it. I scraped by, but that's a reason why we don't have diversity. And it is important, like I said, in this demographics, they only ask for two genders. They don't ask, for trans. They don't ask if you're part of the queer community. None of that information is there. So, we can take a guess. It's likely extremely low. There's actually one thing that I wanted to tell you. This morning, I'm really bad about just kind of like waking up and like looking at my phone. And I'm looking at some of the dietitian Facebook groups and where we exchange ideas and ask questions. And this dietitian, younger dietitian, which was a little surprising, she has a transgender patient, and she said they have not undergone a sex change yet. It was infuriating. So I obviously politely corrected her, and gave her some proper terms to use and some resources. But that right there, in a very public forum, and you cannot trust your practitioner if they don't know even the simplest, terms to use. So the other way to correct that is cultural competency. When I went to my internship was at Vanderbilt University Medical Center, and they're really, really great about teaching cultural competency within the queer community. And it's extremely helpful. So I would say, more practitioners need to go through that and more extensively with the queer community.
Jenn, I'm sure there's 100 things that are coming into your brain right now.
Oh yeah, you have so much good work to do, Nicholas, to bring this community together, to have this conversation. And the structural pieces of the education and the accreditation process and access to that is an equity issue. Like, pure and simple, again, like so many kind of feeder processes into different fields. Like, where do people get derailed economically and financially? And what sort of means and support are they coming into their want to be this with? And then where do they kind of fall out of the process on their way? We lose so many talented people that could be doing what you're doing and are so needed for all the reasons we've been talking about. But It's equity issues in the design of, which is so true for like every kind of, I feel like there's not a single system of education to become, you know, a qualified practitioner that doesn't need sort of to be rethought. And from an accessibility perspective and an equity perspective. So gosh, that it just feels really critical what you're doing. And I love, you know, I also think if we just have a medical model, I think, you know, there's so many other factors that you're introducing and making, you know, me think of that really like tie into true like health outcomes, that it's not just the solve with the medical establishment per se, but it's this like these other aspects of more holistic health as we look at ourselves and the full picture of ourselves and our health and our well-being and wellness. And we also have to broaden the lens of what that means and how we look at it too, because there's so many practices that I think need to be respected, you know, in addition to, I suppose, the sort of traditional way we think about our health. And I love the many conversations that are going on now that is broadening that aperture, right? That is looking at it through different prisms. And so I just love that you're like bringing this piece, and it's so needed. I mean, I guess I might ask, what would your advice be for somebody who hadn't thought about this field and yet is passionate about health and is listening to this and saying, oh my goodness, or this is a great idea for somebody in my life that I think would be incredible at this. You know, where would they start, and how do they really not just start and look into it, but become kind of an advocate for change in the space that's needed as you see it?
Yeah, increasing the diversity, whether it's, you know, people of color or the queer community, is so important in dietetics and really the entire medical field. And again, we are, especially this year, the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics has been taking some steps forward to making, you know, access a little bit easier with diversity scholarships and things like that. So, you know, first step is really, I mean, you have to get a degree in nutrition and food science in order to become a dietitian. And they're about to change it. Before, you could get an undergrad degree, but they're actually going to make access even harder by making it a requirement to have your master's. So another barrier, but, you know, you do have to complete that, and then an internship. I would say find a mentor, you know, call a dietitian, call me, email me if you're interested in going into this field. Ask me all the questions you want, and I'm happy to do that. Does that answer some of your question?
You know, would you just restate like where to find you, and where is the best way to get in touch with you? I love that invitation. It's so generous. And I do think mentors are key, particularly when you're underrepresented and you know it. We have to hang together and we have to support each other, but you're not alone. Like if you're interested in these fields, people like you are out there, Nicholas. It's just like, I didn't even think about dietitians as a community that had diversity issues until today.
Yeah.
So I'm just so appreciative of you broadening my lens, but also like, it's a great field. Like it's, you know, you're needed, and it's a
Thank
great
you.
field.
I'm so happy.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm so happy to hear you say that. Yeah. So I have a website, halcyonhealth.us. If you want to visit that, there's obviously a contact page there, and I'm sure you'll post the link. And then my email address is nick@halcyonhealth.us. You know, reach me there, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Beautiful. And then, so it's HALCYON health.
It is, yeah.
We have it scrolling along the bottom, but you never know. Just want to make sure it's accessible for everyone.
Thank you. Yeah, check it out. It's super colorful. It's so freaking gay. It's so inviting. That was my intention, to just have it as colorful and inviting as possible.
I love that.
I love your website. There's just so much color, but it's like, it's just warm, you know, even though there's a lot of color, it's very warm, which is great. I love it. Super gay. Who doesn't love a super gay website?
Who doesn't? And who doesn't need that every day?
Life is too short for your website not to be super gay.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much, Nicholas. This was fantastic. I really, really appreciated this conversation. This was really good.
Thank you for having me on and being able to give me this platform to talk about it, and all of your wonderful questions. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you bet.
Thank you.
All right, Jen, you and I believe, will be back same time next Monday. So 10 Eastern, 7 Pacific,
Awesome.
for another early Monday conversation.
I look forward to it and enjoy, for all of you that are on a sort of some kind of break this week, enjoy it. Relish it. I know breaks have been hard to come by in this pandemic year, and enjoy, but I'm working on that myself. And so I'm looking forward to a little bit of a less intense schedule this week.
Nice. We'll see how that goes. We'll report back on Monday.
Good luck with that.
Yeah. All right. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.